Archaic Records.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Archaic Records here with you again. My name is Jamie, coming to you from Nashville, Tennessee. And for today's episode, we're going to be taking a quick look at the newest album by former Inspiral Carpets frontman, the legendary Tom Hingley. The name of Tom Hingley's newest record is The Grand Mall, and this is an album that I was extremely excited about. When I first caught wind of it, I am a huge Tom Hingley fan, and I have been for many, many years. Tom Hingley, of course, is most well known as being the frontman of the highly influential British rock band, the Inspiral Carpets. The Inspiral Carpets were a band that, at least in my opinion, over here in the United States, never really got their due. I mean, this was a band that never really reached that same level of success that they celebrated in their native Britain or throughout most of Europe, for that matter. And the way I see it, there's a couple of reasons for that. One being that, yes, American and European music fans are just sort of different by definition. But secondly, and probably more importantly, was if you go back and you study that time frame during which the Inspiral Carpets released their four most important records, at that same time, over here in the United States, we were living through the height of the grunge revolution, or as it could be more accurately described, the grunge monopoly, which isn't to suggest that there wasn't any other type of music that was reaching the charts during that time over here in the United States. But when it came to rock-based music, grunge had become so massive following the release of Nirvana's Nevermind in 1991, that it really sort of pushed every other style of rock music out of the American youth's consciousness, and I was no different. I'm here to tell you that I ingested my fair share of grunge back in those days, but at a certain point in time, I found myself growing kind of bored of it. I mean, what started off as sounding revolutionary had become kind of redundant. What I once thought was fresh had become very formulaic, especially once you got into the second and third tier of grunge, and suddenly you've got fourth and fifth tier bands living on the charts. I mean, when you've reached a point in time when Silverchair, Seven Mary 3, and Collective Soul are being considered rock gods, I think it's time to move on, which is what I decided to do. It was right around this time I sort of became bored with what was going on in the American Northwest that I decided to sort of expand on my musical boundaries a little bit, and I became very fascinated on what was going on in the UK. And the Inspiral Carpets, to me, at that time, were a band that were just infinitely interesting. I mean, this was a band that, you know, had this sort of shroud of mystery around them. They were kind of intimidating. I mean, this was a band that was the darlings of the elitists and the music snobs and the crabby record store clerks that I sort of secretly wanted to be, you know, accepted by. So at a certain point in time, I decided to take the plunge. I bought a couple of Inspiral Carpet CDs. I took them home, I listened to them, and I immediately became a huge fan. I never looked back, and to this day, I would make the argument that those first four Inspiral Carpets records are not only among the best, but certainly among the most important records of the early 1990s. Now, as far as Tom Hingley goes, in 1997, while taking a break from the Inspiral Carpets, he and his band, Tom Hingley and the Lovers, released an EP called Work, Rest, and Play. In 2000, Tom Hingley released his first solo album, the unbelievable Keep Britain Untidy, one of my favorite records in his entire catalog. In 2001, he released another solo album called Soulfire. In 2003, Tom Hingley and the Lovers came back with another single. This one was called Yeah, followed by that band's first full-length studio album, ABBA Are the Enemy, in 2004. Now, that's a statement that I don't necessarily agree with. I don't know what you have against ABBA, son, but I sort of like the kooky Swedish songbirds, if that's all right with you. In 2008, Tom Hingley and the Lovers released their second and final full-length studio album called Highlights. In 2009, Tom Hingley came back with another solo album which was called the Thames Valley Delta Blues. In 2011, Tom Hingley formally split with his former band, the Inspiral Carpets. And in 2013, he released 2 albums. One was called Sand, the other one was called Paper. Now, in 2014, his former band, the Inspiral Carpets, came back and released their self-titled album, this one featuring a vocalist by the name of Stephen Holt. Now, this was a record that when it first came out, this sort of self-titled Inspiral Carpets record, I bought it when it came out. I have it somewhere in this dungeon on CD, and it is a record that, honestly, I don't love, and that's nothing against Stephen Holt, the vocalist of the band, but when you are replacing somebody like Tom Hingley, I mean, that is a tall feat, in my opinion. So for me, that 2014 Inspiral Carpets record is one that I don't want to say that I don't, I don't celebrate at all, or I don't recognize, because it has some memorable moments, but it's definitely, in my opinion, not even close to the 4 original albums from the early 1990s. In 2014, Tom Hingley released an album called No Peace for the Good Looking with his new band, the Tom Hingley Band. In 2018, that same band released an album called I Love My Job. I actually really like the Tom Hingley Band. The Tom Hingley and the Lovers albums are albums that I like. I listen to probably the least of anything in his catalog. But those 2 albums in 2014, 2018 by the Tom Hingley Band are albums that I actually like. I like them much more than the Tom Hingley and the Lovers albums, but nowhere near as much as Tom Hingley's solo albums. In 2020, he came out with his solo album Hymns for the Hungry, which is an album that I absolutely love. I mean, my favorite album of his post the Inspiral Carpets is Keep Britain Untidy from 2000 from the year 2000. And if you haven't heard the album Keep Britain Untidy, it is the jugs, in my opinion. Anyway, this new album, The Grand Mall, was just released in September of this year, and this is an album, like I said before, that I was extremely excited about. I am a huge Tom Hingley fan, and I have been for many years. It had been 4 years since Tom Hingley had released his last album, which was Hymns for the Hungry, an album that I really like a lot. This album, The Grand Mall, absolutely does not disappoint. This is probably one of my, as of right now, this is probably one of my top 5 favorite records of 2024. It is a record that takes you in a lot of different directions. Sonically, this is a record that I have been listening to in extremely heavy rotation over the past few weeks since it was released. Now, there's been a couple albums released in the past week or so that have sort of knocked this one a little bit to the side. Not that I'm over this record or bored of it. I'm certainly not. But the new record by Blitz Vega, which of course features former Smiths bassist Andy Rourke, and my favorite new record as of this moment right now, which I will be doing a review on in the next couple days, is the new album by Rubble Bucket. That album is called Year of the Banana. But as of right now, I think it's safe to say that this album, The Grand Mall by Tom Hingley, is probably in my top 5 favorite records right now of 2024. Now, I am a little bit biased. It's hard to practice impartiality when you're talking about somebody that I am this big of a fan of, because I am a huge fan of pretty much everything that this guy has done throughout the course of his career. Of course, the stuff with the Inspiral Carpets probably still reigns supreme, but I really celebrate everything that this guy has done. I really like the production on this record. The first song on this album is a song called Actors. This is a very beautiful sort of acoustic folk jam. It's basically just, Tom Hingley and a guitar. And when you drop the needle on this record and you go right into this first track, you immediately realize that Tom Hingley's voice is still spot on. I mean, Tom Hingley is one of my favorite vocalists of any genre in the history of rock and roll, especially over here in the United States. I think that he is one of the most underrated rock singers of all time. I mean, can you imagine being born with a voice like that? And the fact that this guy is Not old, mind you. He's 59, which is not old. But at the age of 59, this guy's voice is still note perfect. This song is beautiful. I think it's a great way to start the record because it has been 4 years since he released his last record, and he just drops in with this voice. It's like, yeah, I'm still here, still got it, suck it, son. Anyway, to me, this song is sort of about fate, and it asks the question: how much control do humans actually have over their destiny? I love this song. I love the vocal performance on it. It's a great way to kick off the record. I mean, the vocal performance on this record is going to be a reoccurring theme throughout this review. I can assure you of that much. The second song on this record is a song called Easy, which is a real, just suave, kind of indie rock tune. Just sort of describe it superficially. This is just like a really cool song. He sings this song in a slightly higher register, but this guy can control his voice like a well-trained dog. I mean, I love this song. I love his vocal performance on it. Instrumentally, this is probably one of my favorite songs on the track. It's just kind of like got a cool, jazzy, swanky, suave sort of indie rock beat. I love the song Easy. The next song after that is a song called Take It Like a Woman, another one of my favorite songs on this record. It's got kind of an indie psychedelic kind of feel to it. It sounds sort of like, Manchester meets Strawberry Alarm Clock. Another absolutely brilliant vocal performance on this song. We're on the third song on this record, and so far his voice is different, but virtually perfect on all three of these songs. He sings them all at a different register, at a sort of different tempo. This song, I think, sort of implies, and, every time I do these interpretations of songs, I've said that before, it's important to reiterate that when I do these interpretations of songs, I'm not saying that this is how it's written, this is what it says, this is sort of how I sort of interpret the lyrics, and the way I interpret the lyrics in this song is that women really actually are the stronger sex. As a young man, at least if you were raised my age by people of a certain generation, I spent a lot of my youth growing up around my, World War II Korean War era grandfather, who was not macho. You can't really describe him as being macho. That wouldn't really be an accurate way to describe him, but he was just a very stern, matter-of-fact, unemotional type American male from that era. And one thing that he always sort of preached was, if things didn't go your way, take it like a man. If you fall off your bike, rub a little dirt on it, walk it off, and move on with your day. But this song is sort of implying that what you really should have been taught was take it like a woman. Because if you're like me, most men, you sort of take it, kind of whiny and snivelly. I mean, I know, speaking for myself, when I get sick or when I'm not feeling my best, I'm not always the most pleasant person to be around. Whereas, typically women handle those situations a little bit better than we do. I think that's what this song is implying, is that women actually are the stronger of the two sexes. So instead of being taught to take it like a man when I was growing up, I should have been taught to take it like a woman. Although I can't imagine my grandfather ever preaching such nonsensical bullshit, in his opinion. The next song after that is another sort of acoustic indie sort of folk jam. The song is called Another Bird on a Wire. This song is just beautiful. It's just beautifully played, beautifully sung. Another brilliant vocal performance. This song, with this entire record really, but anything in Tom Hingley's career, but this song sort of illustrates it the best, is the difference between an artist that is talented and an artist that is gifted. Because again, this is probably one of the best vocal performances on the entire album, and it's pretty simple, just sort of an acoustic, folky, indie kind of jam. And you listen to Tom Hingley sing on this track, and it just makes you realize that his voice is literally a gift from God, or whatever it is that you believe in. It doesn't have to be God, but it is a gift. It is not something that can be taught. Now, it's probably something that he's worked on, something that he has had help in perfecting, because as I mentioned before, the guy's voice, it's hard to imagine another singer that has the control in his voice that Tom Hingley has. And on this song in particular, I mean, his voice is like silk sheets, man. You just want to climb in there, nuzzle in, and just sleep one off. This song is beautiful. It's one of my favorite songs on the record. The next song after that is a song called Harder. This song has a totally different vibe to it than anything else on the record up to this point. It's got kind of an indie post-punk, a little bit of dark wave, like a dash of new wave. Again, just an incredible vocal performance. This is one of my favorite songs on the record. This song kind of talks about what it's like to just sort of be kind of stumbling and bumbling your way through life. Not necessarily in a bad way. Actually, I think in sort of a positive way, because at a certain point in time, as you reach sort of middle age, you become smart enough to realize that you don't really know anything. I think a lot of us, at least speaking for myself, when I was younger, when I was 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, I felt like I knew a lot more than I feel like I know now. Now, you might be saying, that's not that difficult for you, dumbbell. But I think it actually takes a certain amount of wisdom to realize that the older you get, the less you actually know. And I think that this song is sort of trying to illustrate that. This song also sort of paints the picture of a narrator that as he's gotten older, he's also become less social, which is something that I can totally relate to. Now, I have a job where I'm forced to be social 40 hours a week. I have a job where I work very closely with the public, and it used to be that when I was finished with my work day or my work week, I would go out with friends and I would continue socializing throughout most of the evening. But these days, I've slowed down my lifestyle, significantly. But apart from that, I'm also just a lot less social than I used to be. When I'm not at work, I'm quite content hanging out here in my record room, listening to music, reading magazines, and that's kind of like, as I've gotten older, something that has changed in me. And I feel like he sort of is talking about that a little bit in this song. This song, Harder, is the jugs, in my opinion. Really, I mean, if you're trying to find clunkage on this album, you're going to have to dig pretty deep, because even the couple of minor quibbles that I have about this record are very, very minuscule, in my opinion. The next song after that is a song called How Could I Be So Wrong? Again, one of my favorite songs on this record. It's got a really cool post-punk, dark wave, kind of new wave vibe. This song it's sort of a narrator, I think, looking back on a relationship that they were responsible for damaging, if not outright killing. And it sort of continues on as that sort of old cliche that, you don't really know what you got till it's gone. And the person in this song is really pining over this relationship that they destroyed somehow. It's not really specific in the way that this relationship was described, but this is somebody that's looking back on this relationship longingly. They're sort of pining to go back in their own time and sort of relive this relationship, but do it the proper way this time. Now, I'm somebody that, trust me, in my younger years, I could cripple some relationships. I did cripple some relationships, for that matter. And it took me a long time to realize my role in that, which is why, although my wife's job living with me isn't necessarily the easiest job of all time, it's certainly easier than it was maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, back when I was much more of a horse's ass than I am now. But this song is gut-wrenching. I mean, his vocal performance on this song, it just tears your guts out. This song is so well written. It's so accurate. And honestly, most people, unless you're very fortunate, most people have been put in that position of going through a breakup, and especially when you go through your first breakup, at least in my experience, it was something that I honestly didn't even know if I was going to make it through the end of. I mean, I ended up moving states to try to get away from the person that I had broken up with. Not because she was this demon monster, but because I honestly didn't even know if I was going to be able to get through that relation or get through that breakup emotionally. So I ended up leaving my home state of California and moved to Seattle, which turned out to be great. Not complaining. I loved it up there. But that was one of the main reasons why I ended up leaving. I didn't even realize it at the time. It wasn't until many years later when I sort of went back and examined that relationship, looked at it in this sort of same, fashion, that I realized what I had done. Now, we both made mistakes. Most relationships fail because both people make mistakes. Generally speaking, one person isn't a saint and the other person isn't Satan. That's generally not what happens. But for a long time, I wasn't real honest about that until I went back and looked at it the same way that this narrator is looking at it in this song. This song is, man, it might be the best on this album. The next song after that is a song called My Madness. This song, instrumentally, is snug. It's grimy. It's got like a post-psychedelic kind of indie pop feel to it. Instrumentally, this is, if it's not my favorite track on the record, it's definitely in the top 2 or 3, I would say. Where the song loses me is lyrically. I mean, the lyrics fit the title, My Madness, because it is just sort of kind of rambling, nonsensical, non-flowing thoughts. I mean, this is kind of what it sounds like when I have insomnia. The lyrics of the song are kind of what it sounds like when I can't sleep at night. So I can relate to it, at least in that sense, because I'm a very anxious person by nature. I'm the guy who falls asleep on the couch, and as soon as he goes to bed, is up until 5 in the morning because my brain won't let me, it won't shut up. And that's kind of what this song reminds me of. So lyrically, it's at least relatable, but it doesn't do a lot for me as a song. So I would say that this is, even though instrumentally this is one of the best songs on the record, I would say that this is sort of a lesser song, at least in my opinion, on the record. The next song after that, White Feathers. Whew! This song is the jugs. This is another one of these sort of acoustic indie folk songs. Just beautiful. Great vocal performance. Again, that's a recurring theme throughout this entire record. If you are not a fan of Tom Hingley and his voice, I don't know what you're doing with your life. I don't know how you spend your time, but you are clearly wasting it. Go listen to the song White Feathers and then tell me that you aren't a Tom Hingley fan. I will eat my hat, which I'm not wearing today, by the way. This song is sort of about mortality and immortality and the fact that everybody is mortal and everybody in a way is immortal. And the way that you are immortal is the way you live through, the stories of others. And really, it's sort of up to you. I think it talks about how the legacy that you leave behind is up to you. Now, I used to think that, you had to be somebody like Elvis Presley or Morrissey or Johnny Cash or Babe Ruth or somebody like that to be considered immortal, because those people are immortal. They will always be talked about. They will always be celebrated. But it wasn't until I probably reached my own middle age when I realized that everybody is immortal in their own way, because we do live on through stories and we live on through photographs. And now, especially, we live on through social media and YouTube and things like that. And it's really up to us what the legacy is that we leave behind. This was a conscious decision, something that I thought about consciously several years ago when I made a decision to try to eliminate a lot of the negativity that I was fostering in my life and therefore sort of projecting out into to the world. Now, I'm not Jesus Christ on the cross here. I'm not holding myself up as an example to anybody, but for me, it was really this kind of concept, the thought of this that sort of pushed me in that direction was I don't necessarily want to be remembered as being just this angry, bitchy, unpleasant person. I want to have left behind something positive. That is the whole point of this YouTube channel. That is why this channel is dedicated to positivity. Now, once in a while, I might take what you would consider to be a cheap shot at somebody like Post Malone, who's an idiot and deserves to be called out as an idiot. But 99% of the time, this channel is, it's based on positivity. It's based on music I love. It's based on artists I celebrate. Music is, apart from my personal relationships, music is the most important thing in my life. I'm here to tell you that I know for a fact that music has saved my life, literally, on multiple occasions. That's why this channel is a celebration of the positivity of music. And for me, this was something that I made a conscious decision of many years ago that I'm going to try. Now, it's not easy because, man, you want to talk about somebody who could get dark and gross and negative? I was the king, son. I was the king. But it was tough. And I think that what this song is saying, or at least this is the way I sort of relate to this song, is yes, we are all mortal and we are all immortal. And our immortality lives on through what we leave behind, what you do when you are here. I would prefer to have left the world a slightly cheerier place than I found it. If I can provide somebody with a snicker or a cheap giggle, I'm all the happier for it. Or if you can just see me as an example of something that you don't want to be, I think that's positive too. The song White Feathers is beautiful. It's beautifully written, beautifully performed. I love the meaning in the song. I love the lyrics. This is probably my favorite song on the entire record. It's pretty simple. It's an acoustic folk melody, him and an acoustic guitar, but his voice just, it makes your skin drip. This guy's voice is just unbelievable. The next song after that is a song called This Is My First Rodeo, kind of an indie post-punk type vibe to it. Really cool instrumental track. Again, great vocal track. I don't really understand what he's saying in the lyrics, but it isn't a bad song. It's one of the lesser songs. There's a couple lesser songs on this record. My First Rodeo is probably one of them. The next song after that is a song called Open Up, which is another sort of acoustic folk indie type of jam. I think the song is basically about breaking down barriers, building trust in others, developing trust in yourself. I really like the lyrics to this song. Again, it's a real sort of pretty acoustic, beautifully performed track. The album ends with a song called Turnstile, which is another sort of acoustic indie folk song. But this one is a little bit more, anxious sounding. This one is a little bit more spastic. Again, as I talked about earlier, with that song My Madness, lyrically, the song My Madness sounds kind of like Insomnia. Instrumentally, I think that this track, Turnstile, sounds a little bit like Insomnia. It's a little bit fidgety. It kind of makes you feel a little bit uneasy. The vocals on this track are desperate. They're gut-wrenching. Every time I've listened to this record, when I get to this track, this record sort of ends perfectly with this song because this kind of leaves you feeling a little bit jittery, a little bit uneasy. I actually really love this as being the last track on this record. So for me, Turnstile is one of the high points. Again, it's a little bit uncomfortable. It's a little bit, it kind of makes your skin itch, kind of makes your teeth feel a little bit grimy, but I really like it. I think it's really well done. I think it's effective in what it does. So for me, this is an album, The Grand Mall by Tom Hingley, that you have to go out and check out and listen to if you haven't already. If you are a fan of anything that he's done previous to this, especially going back to the Inspiral Carpets. Are you kidding me? The Inspiral Carpets are a band that have to be brought onto this channel ASAP. I don't know what I'm doing. Why have I not gotten to that point yet? I apologize. They're coming up soon. I can pretty much guarantee you that. But check out this album. You will not be disappointed. In my opinion, this album is about 95% Jug certified, so do yourself a favor right now. Do it now! What are you doing? Turn this off and go listen to The Grand Mall by Tom Hingley. You can thank me later. I am already aware that you will be thanking me, so that's thanks enough, I suppose. Anyway, before I get out of here today, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the passing of the Grateful Dead bassist Phil Lesh, who passed away yesterday now. I may lose a little bit of my punk rock street cred by admitting this to you today, but I am a pretty big casual Grateful Dead fan. Now, I'm certainly not an expert. I'm certainly not an obsessive. I would never try to pass myself off as that. But as somebody that is a Bay Arean, I am well aware and I celebrate the importance of the Grateful Dead. And I am somebody that is genuinely a fan of most of their music. Not all of it, not everything that they ever did. If I had one main quibble about the Grateful Dead, I've always said this, that I don't necessarily love Bob Weir's voice. I was always a bigger fan when it came to Jerry's singing than I was of Bob Weir's. But I am a big Grateful Dead fan, and I would just be remiss if I didn't mention the passing of Phil Lesh, a music and especially a Bay Area music icon. Back in 2017, I believe it was at the Museum of Modern Art in San Francisco, I believe. They hosted an exhibition which was to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Summer of Love, and it was just beautifully well done. If you are a fan of the city of San Francisco, which as a Bay Arean, of course, I mean, I'm biased, but I am. It was such a cool look back at the history of the city that I love, especially in terms of the music and art and the counterculture. And you realize how important when you went back and you looked at the history of 1967 in San Francisco. It made you realize just how important the Grateful Dead were to that city. I mean, how many bands, how many artists can say that they really shaped what an entire city was going to be moving forward? I think the Grateful Dead can rightfully make that claim. So for a band that is from my favorite city, San Francisco, I want to say thank you very much to Phil Lesh. What a life, man. What a life that guy lived. Anyway, safe travels, my friend. Thank you so much for the ride. I will probably be listening to some Grateful Dead throughout the course of this weekend just to commemorate the great Phil Lesh. Anyway, so I just wanted to put that out there because I am a huge fan of anything that really came out of San Francisco, but especially you go back and you study 1967, the Summer of Love, the impact that the Grateful Dead and the counterculture and all that had on San Francisco cannot be overstated. So thank you very much, Phil Lesh. And thank you very much for checking out this video. This is Archaic Records. My name is Jamie, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. Be sure to go out and support your local record store. Check back most weeks for Morrissey Monday, a celebration of all things Morrissey and the Smiths, as well as other record content and album reviews throughout the week. And for the love of God, check out the new album by former Inspiral Carpets frontman Tom Hingley. Whew. So far, this one's in my top 5 of 2024, son. But as of right now, I think that's just about gonna do her. So until next time, my friends, talk to you then.